Nazis in 1942.
At times.
He wasn't murdering all the time.
Soldiers fighting against or imprisoned by the Nazis during World War II. Pope Francis approved the cause of his beatification in 2019, but due to the pandemic, the ceremony was delayed until this November 20th. Father Malcolm was born in 1916 and was ordained priest just before the outbreak of the crisis in 1939. As a priest, he was a member of an underground group of thousands of volunteers called Lily of the Valley, which supported families persecuted by the Nazis. He used to collect money which he then shared with these families. He also brought back food and products necessary for daily life. Over 1941, he was arrested and tortured while in prison. He was then sentenced to death and was beheaded in 1942. His body was never recovered. In the titular church, he asked for a symbolic tomb to be built that would remember him next to Stephen, who was the cemetery in the city. He could pray in Our Father for him. But an expression of he was sentenced to death by guillotine after saving thousands of people.
You mentioned the popes and the popes' names and why names matter. How long have popes been choosing names?
From the 530s.
Roberto
So
Gualtieri
normally
has
they
been the
just
mayor of Rome for just over a month.
that
That's why he visited one of his city's most well-known citizens, Pope Francis. According to the mayor, the two discussed the upcoming 2025 Jubilee and other topics. Although it has not yet been announced, the Holy Week is traditionally celebrated in Rome every 25 years. Last Jubilee was conducted by Pope Francis unexpectedly in 2015 and 2016. It was an extraordinary and essential gesture of tolerance. As a gift, the mayor brought in these sandwiches and lasted an hour, and they said goodbye with an enthusiastic handshake.
As a Dominican or a
The
Franciscan,
new ambassador of
given
Ghana
the
to the Holy See, Angelina Maiden, Misa, brightened the apostolic palace with her traditional Romanian attire and cheerful smile. She presented her credential letters to Pope Francis and greeted him on behalf of her predecessor and president of Ghana.
we know that Pope Benedict chose the name. Yes, Benedict is indeed to be a figure of peace. We know that Pope Francis chose the name.
Before saying goodbye, the Pope blessed the group accompanying the ambassador and assured them of his prayers. The Holy See established diplomatic relations with Ghana in 1975, and many of the African countries' educational and health institutions were established by the
When
Catholic
a cardinal is
Church.
elected pope, it's one of the it's one of the first because everybody's going to call him by that name. And
In a meeting
basically,
with members of the
first
Swedish Academy, Pope Francis recognized them as special media presents to his media dialogue.
and so that'll be one of the big surprises after the cardinal elections as St. Peter saying "Qui nomen sibi imposui," and then they'll give us that name to whom this name is going to be called. And then we'll learn it, and we'll learn a lot about the man who reaches out to them about the name, the choice of name.
You hear the bell?
Vicas tue maestatis gratia, Dei Deus pastoris, concessione letificet, qui et preventuam virtutibus instruat, et fideli.
Integrating into society.
Because there's going soon to be a second.
I think that's beautiful. Well, they don't have a lot of
Dominus
this
vobiscum,
name. When you think about the
sic
timeline in
nomen
terms of
Domini
successful
benedictum,
elections, white vote, you get
adiutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Has anyone ever gotten
Benedicat vos, omnipotens Deus,
He also stressed the right of children to grow up without discrimination
Filius,
and recognize the value of
et
sport in bringing
Spiritus
people with different
Sanctus.
Then
backgrounds
you're
together.
asked, which points to the truth that if the votes start being counted toward you, you have to start. If you haven't yet, what can you choose? Said that in 2005, set a law.
Was then presented with a jersey with his name written in the Romani
He began
language,
to think
in
about
which
his
on the
name
front
then.
reads,
And then
"All
if he
together,
had his
racism and
discrimination, he was going to choose the name John.
crowd at
And
the
so
Pope's
when
general
those
audience fell silent when this group from the United
scrutineers, the
States
third
started to
scrutineer,
sing.
is
Sing
shouting
Freedom
for the last name over and more and more and more. That was encouraging to her. You knew after the end, I think, of what this reality is. It's something that I think humility was quite reverent.
They also sang
Echo
the
was.
secret time.
Think about that as a massive discretionary prayer. What a thing, everyone. But when you are in context, you begin to think about it again. You know, when they're choosing an Episcopal they're making some statements
You see that our faith
and in the case
is very
of
important.
Bergoglio,
He
created 77 and he would find ballots. I think it was the fifth ballot of the day. So when we hit 77 was spontaneous.
What can we
But
transmit
the
to
votes
it?
it's still a formal act. All votes have to be counted. And so he did have a little while to think about it, and that was where he had this conversation from. It was from Brazil. So that is likely to happen.
Many groups
too,
attend the general
because
audiences at the
important
Vatican to
you have
pray
to get over
alongside
that
the
threshold.
Pope. For those who come from
Unless
far away,
this
it's
drags
also an
on for a long
opportunity
time
to
and
show
you
the Pope
just
their
get over the
support.
limit of
Gestures like
89,
this one.
you will have some time to think about it.
And it points to the importance of that fraternity, that really beautiful
The average age of recipients of the Nobel Prize in Literature is 65. The youngest winner was Rudyard Kipling, who was only 42 years old. The oldest was Doris Lessing, who was 88. You're watching Rome Reports.
Put in those last reminders before
Coming up after the
this
break,
enormous moment
the moving
actually
letters a
happens.
mother addressed to
They
her
answered
sick
as
child.
brothers, and I think they
You're
take
watching
their
Rome
fraternity
Reports.
seriously. One will emerge as a spiritual father, not just to the Church Universal, but also to the College of Cardinals. They will begin to refer to him as Holy Father too. And for many of those cardinals, it could be a younger man, which is a great mystery that every priest lives when people who could be their great-grandparents call them father. But it's likewise going to be this beautiful passage for others to spiritual fraternity and spiritual affiliation, where
Or was made a
they're going to
cardinal.
want to support and have that relationship.
Bordeaux was baptized as a Spanish priest.
He invited me to Rome. He gave me an dinner party and gambled about Italy. And among the exceptional things he gave me was a picture of him as sitting mass for Don Pizzoli.
That picture ended up making it onto the Pope's cover, the Pope's contribution. The Facebook Christian demonstrates the significant influence the Mozzoni's character had. This young boy who would grow up to lead the Catholic Church. Considering Progress's focus on the margins, his love of the poor, and his commitment to the Church, it's no surprise that he learned what it means to be a Christian
together.
and a
He
missionary.
almost has his hand open back with this young man, you know, on his back, kind of ushering him in, walking him through what will be such an important moment in his life.
This beautiful bride became the site of a significant interfaith meeting. Jews, Christians, and Muslims came together to take yet another step forward in encouraging dialogue.
Of the century, some The remarkable it's Pope Gregory the Great, 590 to 604. He was mayor of Rome in his 30s. He was a wunderkind. I mean, he really revolutionized Rome after the destruction of Rome, etc. He eventually leaves all of that political stuff behind and founds the first Benedictine monastery here in the city, which still exists. The Missionaries of Charity, Mother Teresa's sisters, use what used to be his palace right next to the church that has been renovated over the original monastery there that he had founded. He was sent as the papal ambassador to the court in Constantinople. It was as Apocrisarius. Now we would call it nuncio. So he was the nuncio of the Pope to the court. He eventually came back. He was just a deacon. We could call it just a deacon, one of the 7 deacons of Rome. But after the Pope died in 594 or 590, the other cardinal priests here in the city got together, and because of his incredible talents, they elected Gregory to be the Holy Father. He was sick the entire time of his pontificate, but he revolutionized both the internal stuff of the church as well as the church's external relations with all of the civil governments. And that's really the qualification for someone to be denominated great. He's had an enormous impact inside the church and enormous impact outside the church. And so we've got Gregorian chant mainly from him because he was renewing the liturgy. We've got the re-evangelization of England because of him, not to mention the Frankish kings in France. He looked outward and he looked inward, and he really dedicated himself incredibly. His pastoral dialogues, they're called, are read by bishops to this day in preparation for their own episcopal ordination, because it's the most sage advice any bishop could ever have. And so I've just always had a great love for Pope St. Gregory the Great. When I was a seminarian here, I would always go over to his altar. I'd finish the tours that I'd give of the basilica at his altar. And as a young priest, when a priest of the Secretary of State was a little bit late, I'd always get to the altar of St. Gregory the Great first.
That's beautiful. What about you, Matthew?
Well, there's one that I really do love, and that's Pius VII, who was a prisoner of Napoleon, who dealt with that entire horrendous era with such grace. But we talked about him earlier. For me, my personal favorite pope is Paul III, because of the role that he played in bringing authentic reform, of launching the Council of Trent, of navigating what were torturous waters in the light of the Protestant revolt or Protestant Reformation. For all of those reasons, plus it was the reform of his own personal life that, to me, a deep understanding of what he had to do on behalf of the church, and then he embraced that reform in himself and implemented it for the whole church. I simply salute that, and he's largely forgotten in history. Gregory the Great is one of the giants in church history, but Paul III, I think, for me, he's just a fascinating person.
Well, there's just so many of them. It's
Yes.
kind of hard to remember 266 individuals and all of their stories. Obviously, you both do. I do think that is what can be daunting for the men walking in the room. We're going to watch them walking in prayer in just a few minutes for this Mass. Is that you do tell the story of this person's life, their priesthood, the way that they led the church either as a bishop, archbishop, etc., coming up as a cardinal, what they were assigned to here, the legacy of that, the legacy of, I think in modern times we have so much more access to recording how people felt, how Italy, how Rome felt about them, and then of course their legacy as a pontiff, whether it's long or short. And so what it will say about them. I can't imagine wanting that task or desiring that task, let alone how you feel in that moment where someone is finally coming to you and saying, do you accept, and what name will you give? It's significant and enormous. Well, we're walking into what we're seeing now, everyone so beautifully, I think, lined up and ready to go for this Mass. A liturgy that is not going to be complicated. It's relatively simple. What can we expect in terms of celebrant homily for today's liturgy?
So the celebrant is going to be the same Dean of the College of Cardinals who celebrated Pope Francis's funeral, Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, 91 years old. former head of the Dicastery of Bishops here. He'd worked in the Secretary of State for a while, had been a diplomat beforehand. He preached a fiery homily at Pope Francis' funeral. I would expect a similarly youthful 91-year-old homily today.
Have the homilies in the past at this Mass been notable in one way or another? Or
Oh, yes. One in particular in 2005. It was Joseph Ratzinger presiding over this Mass. He had presided over the funeral of John Paul II. This was the homily in which he delivered about the dictatorship of relativism. One of the greatest homilies ever delivered.
Well, we're listening to our opening hymn as we start this beautiful Mass. This is EWTN's live coverage of the Mass to elect a pontiff.
Everyone is singing from 1 Samuel chapter 2. I will raise up for myself a faithful priest who shall do according to my heart and mind. I will establish a lasting house for him. Alleluia. Part of the prayers that the church makes for whoever will become the new Holy Father. And then we sing the words of the psalm. Come, let us ring out our joy to the Lord. Hail the rock who saves us. Let us come into his presence giving thanks. Let us hail him with a song of praise. A mighty God is the Lord, a great king above all gods. In his hands are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountains are his. To him belongs the sea, for he made it the dry land that he shaped by his hand. Then we, his people, the flock of his pasture.